I'm going to call the meeting to order, and I'm going to read the checklist to ensure meetings are compliant with the right to know law during the state of emergency. As chair of the Sanborn Regional School Board's Excellence in Student Achievement Subcommittee, I find that due to the state of emergency declared by the governor as a result of the COVID-19 pandemic, and in accordance with the governor's emergency order number 12, pursuant to Executive Order 20-2004, this public body is authorized to meet electronically. Please note that there is no physical location to observe and listen contemporaneously to this meeting, which was authorized pursuant to the governor's emergency order. However, in accordance with the emergency order, I am confirming that we are A, providing public access to the meeting by telephone, with additional access possibilities by video or other electronic means. We are utilizing Zoom for this electronic meeting. All members of the Sanborn Regional School Board's Excellence in Student Achievement Subcommittee have the ability to communicate contemporaneously during this meeting through this platform, and the public has access to contemporaneously listen and, if necessary, participate in this meeting through dialing the following phone number: 1-646-558-8656, meeting ID 928-3963-3316, or by clicking on the website address www.youtube.com/c/SRSD meeting videos. B, providing public notice of the necessary information for accessing the meeting. We previously gave notice to the public of the necessary information for accessing the meeting, including how to access the meeting using Zoom or telephonically. Instructions have also been provided on the website of the Sanborn Regional School District at www.siu17.net. C, providing a mechanism for the public to alert the public body during the meeting if there are problems with access. If anybody has a problem, please call 603-642-8541 or email at helpdesk@siu17.net. D, adjourning the meeting if the public is unable to access the meeting. In my home, there's nobody in the room with me at the moment, but I do have family members in the house. Patty?
Dr. Patty Haynes, Director of Teaching and Learning. I am at home in my office, but there are other people in the house.
Dawn?
Dawn Dutton. I am in my home in a room with no one else, but my family is in the house.
Ryan?
Ryan Stack, high school principal, alone in my room with family around the house.
Amy?
Amy Fitzpatrick, I'm in my home office alone.
Ryan?
Ryan McCluskey, Memorial School Principal. I am in my home and my family is in the house.
Matt?
Matt Malilla, High School Assistant Principal. I'm in my home, kicked my son out of his bedroom so I could have a desk. And yeah, they're in the house, but we're private.
Grace?
Did you say Chris?
Grace, sorry.
Oh, Grace.
They rhyme. Grace Evans, secondary math coordinator. I'm in my dining room. There is no one else in this room.
Donna?
Hi, Donnell. I'm at Bakey. There are teachers outside in their own classrooms, but I'm in this room by myself.
Christine?
Christine DeRochers. I am at home in my office.
Tom?
Tom Ambrose, Superintendent. I am at home alone in my office.
Chris?
Chris Snyder, Bakey Principal. I'm alone in my school office.
Kim?
Conant, Title I Director. I am home alone in my home office.
And Steve?
Steve Krasnowski, Assistant Principal at the high school. I am alone in my daughter's room and locked my family downstairs.
Okay, thank you everyone for joining us tonight. I'm going to let Patty lead us off.
So we wanted to start with a quick Alma update, and I'll keep this short because I know there are some other things on the agenda we want to get to. We did send out progress reports at the elementary level. We sent out report cards at the elementary level. Those all seemed to go pretty smoothly. We're still working on tweaking some different things. I know Matt has been working at the high school, working on some different back end stuff, but it seems like folks are getting used to it. Ryan and Chris, I don't know if you wanted to jump in with anything about the report cards or how those went, and even Dawn and Jamie, because you were recipients of the first round, first draft of what we had.
Yeah, I'll jump in real quick. Progress reports went well. We got those off. Alma's live for parents. Parents had parent-teacher conferences not too long ago where teachers confirmed that parents had received the invitation email and were able to understand how to access, and we'll continue to provide support on that. Report cards go out this Friday, so not tomorrow, but the right before our break. So we're finalizing those right now, and the goal is to email them out on Friday morning.
I would echo the same things, same sentiment that Mr. McCluskey just shared so eloquently. At Bakey, the progress reports went out. And then with conferences, we were able to confirm that families had access. We also had to troubleshoot with a number of families who just either had not received the email or it had timed out, a number of things like that. So I believe the vast majority of Bakey parents now have access to the parent portal, and the report cards will go out on Friday as well.
And I wanted to give a huge shout out to Donna Donnell and Kim Conant for all the work they've been doing on the back end with parents, dealing with helping parents log in, orienting parents to this. This is a huge undertaking, and it's a brand new interface, and it's a whole new world out there, as Aladdin might say. But I think that it's going pretty well. And I don't know, Dawn and Jamie, if you wanted to just talk a little bit about what you thought of the progress reports or how that looked, or.
After you.
I'm not going to lie. I don't think I got a progress report, but my daughter's not in the building. So that probably has something to do with it.
That could be it. Yep. That could be it.
So I don't know. And report cards, thank God, when Ryan said report cards haven't gone out yet, I was like, oh, thank God, because I didn't get that. So,
I don't know what day of the week it is anymore. It's been a crazy week, but
I was having a little bit of a panic attack there. I was like, uh-oh, what did I miss?
It's like when you're a kid in school and you're like, don't call on me, don't call on me. That feeling, remember that?
Yeah, that's pretty much what it was.
We got Don's report card, and it was very nice.
Well, I know you're lying there because.
We did get James's came in. There was a slight glitch, same line item, but then there's some extra characters on it, and one said one grade and another said another. We talked it through, and it was fixed, and it's all's fine.
Good. Yeah, it's still a work in progress, but it's nice because this year everything's sort of slowly rolling out, which is the way we need to move with this, as we've said before. So.
And Dawn, you can access the progress report live on the parent portal too. It's right.
I'm in there right now. I was like, oh crap, I gotta log in and see what. So how do you actually, because I know other parents that might be watching this, so I'm in here and there is an overview, a to-do, classes, attendance, report cards, fees. I'm in the class schedule, so I can go into each class and see her grades, but how do you access?
So the progress report was printed, but the report card will be right there in the report card.
Okay.
And then
Right.
Into the to-do is like any assignments that are missing, that will be the to-do. And then you'll see the live grades as they go in.
Yep. Yes, that's where I'm looking at that right now. So
that's the best place to look right there.
Yeah. Okay.
Now, I just wanted to mention that for the public, Dr. Haynes has worked tirelessly on this year, and I really can't thank her enough. And I think everyone on the call feels the same way. And I know that Kim and Donna and Matt and everybody on the call has worked on this really hard, but Patty's led the charge. And there have been moments where she's been like, oh my goodness, because rolling out a new system is really, really hard. It's going smoothly, although not perfectly, but it's hard to understand how bad it really could go. Because Patty's doing such a great job, right? And it's not going to be perfect this year as we go through it. We're going to learn about it. It'll tighten up a lot. And we're really looking forward to having it become our student information system next year, because that will streamline a lot of things. And that's really the step that's going to create the seamless feeling of the whole thing.
And I can only get the work done because of my team, and I can rely on them and punt to them, because we're also trying to do other things. And so, being able to turn to folks like Matt and Kim and Donna and saying, okay, here, take the baton. It's we'll get there. We'll get there.
Help.
Okay, thank you for that. Before we go on to agenda item 2, I realized I skipped over approving the minutes of our last meeting, so I am going to move back to that agenda item. Can I have a motion on the minutes of the last meeting, please?
So moved.
Second.
Thank you. Any discussion? Okay, all in favor? Jamie?
Aye.
Dawn?
Aye.
Okay, thank you. Okay, sorry about that. Let's go back to agenda item 2, annual report data.
So every year about this time, we talk in this subcommittee about what we're going to put into the annual report as far as student assessment data and how students did in the prior school year. Goes without saying, the prior school year was not a normal school year. And so there were a lot of things that would usually happen in a school year that couldn't happen last year because of the pandemic and the suspension of just, school as we were used to. And I had sent a proposal to the subcommittee of EISA about what we could put into the assessment section for the data that we did have compared to what we would usually have. And so previous school year data, we usually report on the Fountas and Pinnell benchmark reading assessment, or the F&P. We do still have that data for last year. The statewide assessment, the SAS in English language arts and math, were not given last year. Those were suspended because of the pandemic. For people who may not remember, we did go remote in March, and those assessments would have been given right about the March, April, May timeframe, and those were not given. So we will not be able to report on that data. The NWEA scores for reading and math, those are typically given in the fall. We did have those for last fall. And we also had data for PSATs and SATs for last year. So I would recommend putting that data in there. Our daily attendance rate that we have been putting in there for the past few years could be in there, but it would be a little bit different representation because the way that the state allowed us to record student attendance changed. It wasn't the usual students show up in class and they're present in the building, but we could include that data with an explanation about the fact that we went remote, and so data on attendance was collected differently. And then the other piece of data that we could report on, that we have reported on in the past, is the retention rate percentage of students enrolled in post-secondary institutions after 1 and 2 years. But there are a number of things that we're not going to be able to report on in the annual report this year because of the strangeness of last school year. And I would just ask the subcommittee to either approve my proposal or amend it so that I could start preparing this data, because it's an undertaking that I need some time to get together and get it to Phyllis so that she's got it for the publisher at the beginning of January.
Jamie?
Yeah, so I would agree with your proposal. I would put in the data sets that we have, and I would put in explanations for where we either don't have data sets or caveats about the data set. No, here's the data. It's different from last year because COVID, whatever it is. I think it's better to have the data in there and just be transparent about where there's concerns about comparative nature of the data and why.
I also am hoping in the proposal I put that I would put a section in there that talks a little bit about how instruction shifted in the spring, so that, because the annual report is a historic document, it lives on beyond us, it stays there, people might refer back to it. And I would just want to put in there something to memorialize how instruction shifted, and the fact that in Sanborn, even though the state afforded us a week to go from in-person to remote learning, it only took us 2 or 3 days to do that. So I wanted to make sure we put that in there because that's something for us to be very proud.
I agree. I don't have much to add. Dawn, do you have any thoughts, or are you good with that as well?
No, I agree with that as well.
Okay, then I will proceed with the proposal, and you can look for it in the annual report. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. right, we're on to our update on math.
So even though we had listed in here update on number of days of week and minutes of week of instruction for math at middle and high school, I also asked Chris and Ryan to provide information on that so that we get the full spectrum of how long they're spending in math, going all the way from kindergarten to 12th grade, all the way up through the years. So might as well start with Chris, and you can give us a report on your math instruction and then just go up through the grades.
Right. So thank you. Here at Bakey, our kindergarten, first, second, and third grade students all have comparable minutes. So basically they have 60 dedicated minutes or one hour every day for math instruction. And there are additional things, an additional 5 probably to maybe 10 minutes a day built into their morning meeting time as they talk about different math concepts and things like that. So it's 60 minutes dedicated every day with additional time, sprinkled in. I did talk to our pre-K program coordinator. It's a little harder to define at that age level with 3s and 4s that are here part-time, but she did say in the course of, their day, whether they're here 2.5 or 3 hours, they probably spend, between 30 and 45 minutes talking about math concepts. Again, it's not like they have a writing block and then a math block and then a reading block. It's all kind of built in to the bigger picture, but I thought you might be interested to know that information as well.
Thank you.
Memorial School. I wanted to answer this in 2 different ways, and I'll be brief in doing so. We're kind of looking at 2 different schedules here. One would be what we would be doing in a normal school year, right? We have a master schedule that we built this past summer with intentions of implementing this fall. And as we all know, we've certainly had to adjust to the current state of the world at this point. If we were in a tier 1 model, which would be a normal school year model, we would have somewhere between 45 to 55 minutes, 5 days a week for math dedicated instruction. We would also have 30 minutes of win time, which is an acronym for what I need. That's would be there for math support, math extension, intervention, all of the above, and that would be 4 times a week. So that's what a normal school year would look like at Memorial School for math. Right now we're in tier 2, and before I share what the minutes are, I just want to define what tier 2 looks like at Memorial. We have a shorter school day due to the amount of time that it takes for arrival and dismissal, which is about 20 minutes a day. We have more time dedicated to lunch and recess because we can't overlap teams in the cafeteria or out on the playground. We're trying to keep our cohorts separated, so that lunch and recess time is extended. Mask breaks, and then we've lost staff that would be dedicated for WIN support because they're being pulled in other directions. So those are just different factors that kind of impact what tier 2 and what math instruction looks like. So at this point, we have in 4th, 5th, and 6th grade, it is pretty consistent across the 3 grade levels. We have anywhere between 35 to 45 minutes every day for math instruction. And then we have our 30 minutes of WIN, or what I need, support for math that is 3 times a week. So direct instruction, 35 to 45 minutes, 5 times a week, and math support, 30 minutes times 3.
Ryan, I got a question.
Absolutely.
Is the win time, is that half an hour dedicated to math, or is it whatever I need, regardless of subject?
We have one that's more, reading, writing based, and we have one that's more math based. So it is dedicated for math support.
Thank you.
Yep.
Christine?
Okay. So for the middle school, students have approximately 270 minutes per week. So with a 40-week school year, that comes out to 10,800 minutes.
270 minutes, is that where you started?
Correct,
your
yes.
That per week?
Approximately 270 minutes of math instruction, and that's actually true for all the core contents, not just mathematics.
And I just want to give a big shout out.
Is that a weekly measurement? I just want to.
So yes, that's the weekly measurement is 270.
Go ahead.
No, I was just wondering, Christine, is that about 90 minutes a day? I'm just asking for the public.
So it's 90 minutes every other day. And then Friday ends up being like a skinny day for kids sometimes, depending on what's going on. Versus what we had last year, kids had approximately 40 to 42 minutes.
A day.
Doing and flipping the schedule this year for the middle school students, I was able to increase their core content classes by 2,800 minutes more of core content class instruction.
And this is, I just wanted to illustrate for the committee that this is one of the very excellent things that Christine has worked really hard to do at the middle school to improve instruction and preparation for high school. And it's something that we will be looking forward to talking about with the high school. And they'll talk about, you know, obviously this year is complicated for them, but they have some plans and well, anyway, I'll turn it over to Brian.
Yeah, I'll just tell you what we're doing right now. I'll save the other thing for the next agenda item. So in a non-COVID year, high school students get 120 hours of math instruction in a math course. So kids are required to take 3 math credits as part of their diploma and 1 math experience. A math experience could be a course that has been deemed to have some kind of a math connection to it. Could be a technology class or something to that effect. Most of our students do take 4 years of math. That's pretty typical from a guidance perspective. And that math experience, students take maybe more than 1. But to compare apples to apples, we're talking 120 hours of instruction for a math class. Because of COVID, for some of the same reasons that Ryan suggested, we have 25% of our students remote, and there are a lot of challenges making sure that remote students have some screen breaks, wellness breaks. We've got some increased time with advisory just for communication purposes. So that has brought that number down below 120. We've talked about going back to our pre-COVID bell schedule, but at this time, our staff feel like that may be a detriment to the supports that we have in place for in-person and remote students. And I'll save my comments for next year and 2 years out until we're ready for that on the agenda.
So Brian, how many, oh, I'm sorry, go ahead, Jamie.
I think I'm going to ask the same thing you did. You were about to. It's just to make my comparisons easier. 120 hours per class. I don't know what that translates down to. The other ones were in kind of minutes per day. Did you?
Yeah, so it's hard to translate it because in our schedule, kids have a class 2 days on and 1 day off. So it's hard for me to tell you what it would be in a week because some weeks they'll have 4 classes, some weeks they only have 3. They may have a day off from math if that happens to be the 3rd day.
So when it's a course, how long does a course last?
The courses go all year in our schedule. All of our courses are year round. Our kids take 8 different classes, but in a given day, they would only see 5 of those classes. Classes drop out, so in a regular rotation, so that basically we can get 60-minute classes during the day.
So Brian, if you have in a normal year, Jamie, can I just clarify, because I want to make sure the public understands this. Yep. So in a normal year, you have a 6-day rotation so you would have math 4 times in 6 days.
Correct.
And you would have math for about 60 minutes, or how long? 60
minutes every time you have it.
Okay.
That's where the 120 comes from.
Yeah, it's tricky to think about because it's 180 days, but you only have it 4 times out of 6. So you're just doing the
Correct.
math. And then this year you're doing an A-B model where you have math every other day. So you would technically have math 5 times out of a 10-day rotation in a row.
Yeah. Yeah.
5 times out
Not
of
including win time.
right.
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 Now,
So
I'm not
you have
including win
FLT.
time because, yeah, I didn't include that because they could be in math, but they aren't necessarily in math.
Right. So students who need remediation can select to be in their support block for, is that daily for an hour, or how often is you call it FLT at the high school, right? Flexible learning time?
Yep. Yep. So pre-COVID, it's a 40-minute period that happens 4 out of 6 days in the rotation. And right now it's in an every other day 60-minute period.
So just again, to help me if I might, normal circumstances, we're talking about 4 and 6 in a rotation. So 2/3 of the days that you're in there, in your rotation. Because of COVID and the adjustments that had been made, it's closer to 50%. So we've had to lose some math time because of COVID.
Yes.
Ryan had explained some of the issues that he has in trying to keep the same instruction level going. Is that a fair assessment?
Correct. Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Absolutely. And like I said, we'll talk more about the plans for next year and the year after because those numbers will be different then.
At the middle school, Christine, you had 270 minutes per week. Is that spread out? Is the schedule similar to the high school where it's sort of the block A days, B days, that sort of thing?
So what the middle school has is a blue or gray day, and then other classes don't change. So my students will come in every morning, they have advisory, they have 2 90-minute classes, they have lunch, they have a set time in their schedule for an intervention block, and then they have 2 60-minute unified arts classes. So it's either one day or the other, where Brian has like different like waterfalling taking place. The middle school does not have that anymore.
So are the students specific to math? Are the students that have math every day, or are they skipping days where they don't have math?
They have days where they do not have math.
Okay.
Christine, can you clarify, is it every other day, like an A-B? Or if I were a student, how often would I have math in a 5-day period? I'm just trying to frame this up for parents that don't understand.
Sure, absolutely. Sure. So it's every other day.
Every other day. So it'd be like,
Correct.
it'd be kind of like what the high school is now, where they have it 5 days out of 10. Right. So week 1 but you have your skinny days on Friday, which are a little different than the high school, right? So really it's 6 days out of 10 for the middle school.
I think it depends on the week. So for Friday, because there's no school tomorrow, the middle school is going to do a skinny day. That way they can see all the kids. They want to make sure that the kids don't miss anything. But on a week, the kiddos, if a kiddo has math on Monday, that week they would have math Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. And then the following week it would rotate. It's just something that would rotate.
Okay. But overall, you're able to offer a lot more minutes of math because you're doing a 90-minute block. So it's really, these are interesting things because as we have scheduling conversations, I think it's important for the committee members and the public to know that we've been talking about this a lot as an administrative team. So part of the reason why I'm asking Christine these questions is to help clarify for the public why they have so many more minutes of math at the middle school. And the reality is middle school has less electives and less courses than the high school overall as well. So the high school students are enrolled in 8 classes, but at the middle school, they're only enrolled in what, 6?
Correct. So the middle school does not have to follow certification requirements and graduation requirements the way a high school does. The middle school does not receive credit for their classes in the same way K-6 does not.
Right. I just think it's important for everyone to understand the context. Ryan will have more minutes similar to the middle school when school is in its normal rotation as well. Which, compared to our neighbors who are doing cohort models where kids are in school for 2 days a week, I just want to acknowledge that being open 5 days a week when we are in person, we're getting a lot more direct instruction than a lot of districts around us, because many districts are doing 2 days a week. So it's really hard. It's frustrating for sure.
Does anyone have any other questions or comments?
Not just now.
Okay. Yeah, 'cause I'm sure this will be sort of an ongoing conversation, but okay. Thank you for all of that information. All right, so I guess we have time for agenda item 4.
Is that me? That's me,
Me
right?
too. Yep.
Perfect. I'm just checking. All right. If you, I will, do I have the ability to share my screen?
Should.
Hopefully. Yes. Okay, good. For those of you that would rather follow along or look later, I put in the chat for you a copy of what I'm sharing right now, a link to it. So we're going to talk a little bit about some proposed changes to the high school schedule. And what I'm going to offer you tonight as a recommendation is that we think of this in 2 parts. We talk about a long-term plan and a short-term plan. I'm actually going to start with the long-term plan. So to think about the work that we want to do as a high school in the long term, what we're aiming for, we believe, as we met, is we're looking for a plan that's going to allow for more balanced class sizes. For all of our classes, we're looking for a target of 22 students in our classes. Right now, where we have a schedule that has about 19 in a class on average. We're looking for a plan that's going to allow us to improve instruction with some increased time for ELA and mathematics. And we're also looking for ways that we can reduce the number of preps that teachers have. So a prep for non-educators, that would be a course that you teach. You might have 2 or 3 or 4 different courses that you have to plan for, and then you might teach multiple sections of that course. Part of this plan would look at diploma options and how we break up the credits that you need to graduate, looking at particularly our high diploma and what we can do to increase rigor with that diploma. And the 4th item would be a schedule. Hold on one sec. Sorry, my children were coming upstairs and making noise. A schedule that allows us to do all of this. So we need to look at the benefits that we might have from a 5, 6, 7, or 8 period schedule. And we want to look at the benefits that we might get from thinking of our schedule in terms of a trimester or a semester or a year long. That's a very big conversation. And we definitely want to have a plan that allows for teacher supervision duties to take place. So there's a lot to this, as you can see. When you do all of this work, you can actually parse that out. And there's 3 big pieces of that work that needs to be discussed. One is we need to come up with a schedule. How we use our time is important in the school. We need to make sure that we have a schedule that's going to give us the most efficiencies and the most opportunities for students. Looking at those graduation requirements and making a recommendation on the board policy that dictates those graduation requirements is a big piece. And then finally, looking at our program of studies. So for as long as I've been at the school, we've been based on an 8-period schedule. And our program of studies is built around the idea that students have 8 choices to make every year. So rebuilding our program of studies for something other than an 8-period schedule is a process that we would want to go through. Of course, doing all this, keep in mind what the New Hampshire minimum standards for school approval are. And there's a link there if you're not familiar with that document. That's a document that tells all schools what the minimum requirements are to operate. So what we're recommending for the long-term plan, and we're hoping for support from this committee, is to develop a committee that will spend essentially a year picking apart some of these different pieces of this puzzle and coming back to this committee and the board at several points along the way with recommendations for different parts of this project. The work would start basically when we come back in January by picking committee members, setting goals, and confirming the timeline that would be we'd be committing to. And then over the course of this spring, that committee would actually start to work on looking at schedules, bringing forth a recommendation, looking at graduation requirements, bringing forth a recommendation, and then ultimately working on that program of studies, bringing forward a recommendation. So that our target deadline is to have all of this work long-term complete by this time next year, so that when we start our course selection process with students, which we do every January, we would be able to do that and be ready to make any staffing decisions we need to make by March. So there's a lot of work to do it right. We want to make sure, because it's such a big project, we want to make sure that we have the right stakeholders at the table doing that committee work. We want to make sure that there are opportunities for feedback loops so that we can collect data from different stakeholders to be a part of that work. And we want to make sure that what we do is coordinated with what the other buildings are doing. We want to make sure it's coordinated with what colleges are looking for and other post-secondary institutions. So it's a big project. It's a big lift. We've talked a lot as a team about having Matt Malilla actually chair that work. I think he's the right person for this job. He's new, but not that new now. A lot of fresh ideas to the work. I think he would do all of this work in a very unbiased manner. And you know, as far as the rest of the committee makeup from there, that's either a discussion we could have at this table, or we could work on that with Tom. It probably makes sense if we work on that with Tom, recognizing it would include lots of different voices. So that's the long-term plan. Let me just talk quickly about a short-term plan for next year. We can take all the questions at once if that's okay. Because I'm sure some of you are saying this all sounds great, but we really would like to see some changes going into next year. So let me share my screen one more time. And let me jump over to one other document. Okay. So in our current schedule, we certainly have the ability to make some changes in the amount of instructional time that a course has. We can't quite do it in the same way that a middle school would or an elementary school would, because in our day, all of our periods have to be the same length, which allows for us to use our teachers in different ways and take elective courses and courses outside of their grade level and that sort of thing. But what we can do is we can certainly change the number of credits that are tied to our courses, which if we do that, inherently changes the number of hours associated with that course. So what you're looking at here, and actually I will put the link, there's a much larger document here that I'll put in the link for you to read, but I think for the sake of argument now, I really just want us to drill into this particular chart that I have pulled up. So we know that we can make internal changes to our 9th grade team because our 9th grade team operates just like a middle school model. So we can make changes internally as long as we don't touch the elective courses, because the elective courses, touching that would require a whole school schedule change, which is part of the work that we want to undertake over the course of this year. So what we're recommending we do for this upcoming year is actually increase the number of credits for math and English from 1 to 1.5. And you can see by the chart here on the left that that's actually showing you how much instructional time would be dedicated to those two areas. So you can see a growth from 120 to 180 hours in those two areas. Now that time has to come from somewhere, and it has to come from somewhere on the team in order to schedule this. So we're recommending that it actually comes from the Global Studies course and the Wellness course. So those courses would actually go down to a half credit. So I'm sure some of you are saying, well, yeah, but wellness and global studies are important. We want to make sure that students have wellness and social studies. Absolutely agree. And you have to recognize a couple of things. First of all, students have elective courses, so they can sign up for additional offerings for students who need additional or want additional social studies or wellness opportunities as a ninth grader. The other thing to keep in mind is that for the minimum standards for school approval, it is actually recommended that the world history class be a half credit course, not a full credit course. So the students are still taking additional social studies credits in future years, and there are courses in the minimum standards that are designated as full credit courses. Right now, the way our global studies course operates, which is over here, it is a full credit. It does have some literacy components built into it. So from a literacy standpoint, what we're suggesting is some of those literacy pieces would just slide up into the English course. The English teacher would still be collaborating regularly with the social studies teacher. In fact, they would be sharing students in a cohort model still. So there would be an opportunity for some interdisciplinary work. And really, English class needs something to read and write about, and that's where the social studies content comes in. The math would be pulling additional hours from that wellness piece. So that is something that we know we could schedule. We've actually mocked up a schedule of proof of concept to make sure that we could do it, and it can be done, and it fits. It overlays directly into our 8-period schedule that we have without disrupting the rest of our schedules. So the short-term goal of increasing math and English instruction for those 9th graders who are going to be working through this new model, whatever it's going to be, and have our long-term plan to start the bigger, heavier work of unpacking this problem in a appropriate manner to get us to where we need to be.
A quick question, Brian, before the board.
Yeah.
You talked to me about the possibility of rolling out the same model for sophomores. Is that on the table?
It is, yeah, that is up for discussion. There is a way, because we team our sophomores for part of the day in core classes similarly, not identically, but similarly to 9th grade. There is a way that we could do the same sort of thing for 10th graders if that was the will of this group. Now, we've gone back and forth as a team trying to decide whether it makes more sense to focus our efforts on that 9th grade piece and make that really what it needs to be, whether we think it's appropriate to take on the 10th grade piece as well. I think your input as a group into that would be really helpful.
Thank you, Brian. Thank you for the presentation.
You're welcome. And I will put a link to that other document right now in the chat for those of you that wanted to look at the whole thing. I just, in the interest of time, that chart seemed to be the most relevant.
So I think we're looking for feedback from the board on an intermediate step versus a long-term step, and you're either reflecting on it, or I can't tell because Jamie just looks organically stoic, so I'm just going to ignore him. And
I'm trying to give others a chance to talk, so I don't hog all the 5 minutes left.
And certainly my team, if I missed anything, feel free to.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's really important to recognize the high school has worked incredibly hard to find an intermediate step to get us to the next step while maintaining the integrity of the process. And as the superintendent, I just want everyone to hear that I do agree with Brian that we talked about this plan and they need time to unpack the graduation credits. They need time to talk about the graduation credits. They need time to make a plan for it, roll it out. But I just said we have to do something. We can't wait a whole year. So I think that this is a really nice hybrid proposal with clearly defined deadlines and a process. And I did also mention to Brian and the high school team that I wanted specifically parents of some of the younger kids on the committee, because those will be the kids in high school when this is finally fully up and running, right? So our current sophomores, juniors, and seniors are going to have to continue on the path they're on until they finish up. But our current 6th, 7th, and 8th graders are going to be rolling into the next schedule. So we would certainly like to have some of those parents, some staff members, and a real community-wide committee. Matt, I'll turn it over to you. I'm sorry, I didn't notice that you were speaking until Zoom's tough. So thank you. I think Matt Malilla, did you want to talk?
No,
I did. It was me.
Oh, Steve, I'm sorry.
Just quickly, one of the things, I mean, we tried to consider a lot of things, and we actually blew up the schedule a couple of times, which was scary, but we know we might have to do that. We also wanted to take into account that it's been a crazy year and a half between merging schools and COVID. So also just having, making sure we want to do the job right, but also just having some sort of consistency in terms of what our schedules were. Blowing it up continuously 2 years in a row, might have some effects, because it wouldn't just be the 9th and 10th graders who are affected. Ultimately, we're looking at the grand scheme, and it does ripple upwards. So we also took that into account. Just wanted to mention that.
Go ahead, Jamie.
Oh, I got a whole series of questions that are more than 10 minutes worth. So Brian, I'll reach out to you direct on some of them.
Yeah, that's fine.
I don't want to take the entire time. It
Sure.
would seem to me that one of the things that you want to achieve, that everybody's trying to achieve, in my mind anyways, the way I think about it would be, what is foundational that students graduating from Sanborn need in their wheelhouse to succeed in life? What are those foundational items? And how do we ensure that we are institutionalizing their ability to get those foundational items so they can build whatever they had the ability to build off from it to whatever place they want to go to in life? They have the foundational abilities to get there. And to me, that's a starting point. And then whatever has to make way to allow the foundation, then you lay the foundation and you build up from the foundation. So the way I think about what we're talking about, that's kind of how I view it. I had Brian, your second link isn't operational. So if you could reset.
Yeah.
Oh, all right. Yeah.
Your hard
Yeah,
drive.
we're going to get that. But I do want to study those. But I mean, one of my quick questions was, I saw the elections, I saw ELA, I saw math. There's one word I see missing there: history. I just don't see it there anymore. History. It's a shame, in my opinion, that it's not there.
Isn't that in the global studies category?
That is the global studies class. Yes. So freshman year is world history. We call it global studies.
So I don't.
American history and as a junior still, right? Well, in 11th grade. Is that
Yeah,
still-
they take. Yep. So all right. So I reloaded in the chat the document as a PDF. Hopefully you can open it that way.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's a great question, Jamie. History happens. Social studies happens to be my favorite subject, even though I taught something different. 9th grade students take world history. 10th grade, and we call global studies. 10th grade, they take economics, and then they take New Hampshire and US government. So we blend the economics and the government together into a course called Your Government, Your Money. But really, if you look at the New Hampshire standards, it's actually 2 half-credit course experiences that get put together. And then in the third year, students take an entire year of American and New Hampshire history. So that's their third year. That's there are 3 graduation requirements. A lot of students then opt to take an elective in addition to that. And we have a number of social studies and history electives.
I put it in the chat, but I just got to say it. I told Brian that Jamie was going to ask about global studies and history. And I think that we did have that as part, Jamie, I think it's really important. I did. I just want everyone to understand that philosophically, I think everyone is in agreement that reading and math are the core skills that everyone needs to be successful. But the content, you can learn reading through content in history, and you can apply math and science.
Right.
So I just don't want anyone to think that, and I want to be very clear that there's a lot of research that shows that art and music and physical education are critical components of having success in life, right? Stress management and physical activity, they're one and the same. So I think that what we're going to look for in the larger schedule, Jamie, is more equal weighting for the 4 core classes and more regular attendance in the history, history, science, social studies, math, ELA, writing, right? All of those different components. But we also need to look at the way that the curriculum's interwoven, because writing in history is really important, right? Thinking about the effect of the events or processing that. So I don't want to negate the multidimensional or interdependent nature of a solid curriculum. I do think that we need enough time every day for math and ELA and science and social studies.
Yeah.
How we do that is going to be the conversation, because there are only so many minutes in a day. So we have to decide, as Jamie said, what one of the first tasks of the committee will be to prioritize how to balance that out. And then we're going to create the schedule beginning with the end in mind. And that's the work that the group has to do.
Yep. And remember, I did say the English and the social studies teacher are still joined together and working together. The difference being, instead of having a credit of English and a credit of social studies, we're putting more emphasis into the English side of things. So some of those literacy components that happen with the social studies teacher would now just be happening with the certified English teacher, but they would be the same elements in some regards that might have been happening had we not made this shift at all. In math, very different. We're absolutely taking time, been in the wellness class, and we are adding it to give additional time into the math class.
And just one other thing to point out quickly, because this is beginning of the work that they're doing at the high school level, but this also translates over to some other things that we're going to have coming up in the next few months and in the next school year. The reaccreditation through NEASC asks a lot of these same questions. So a lot of the work that gets started at the high school is going to trickle all the way down to Bakey School. The work that we did last year on the portrait of a graduate, the student success profile, all of those things are also places for us to look. So this is a very complicated sort of knitting project, if you want to put it that way, of bringing all of this together and really focusing as a school community on what is happening instructionally, what is happening on our students' learning experience, how does all of this go together, and having outside people also help provide input and different perspectives for us to really make this the best program that we can make from K through 12. So it's a big project that we're just getting started with.
Any other comments or questions? Dawn.
I guess I just wanted to ask Grace what her thoughts were on the change to the schedule, because clearly you're here to help us with math. So what are your thoughts on increasing to that 1.5 credits instead of the 1 credit?
Yeah, I think what folks have spoken to about the need to manage change carefully. And folks have had a lot of upheaval this year. I know you've experienced that as a parent. And so what I think might be ideal is not necessarily the best thing for us right now for next year. So I think the idea of being able to place kids in cohorts so that they can have 50% more time in their regular math class will be a really interesting pilot for next year, because our first job really is to strengthen core instruction and think about how are we doing a better job in the math classes we currently teach, rather than adding on a lot of extra bells and whistles.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Well, my comment, I guess, is that your plan is very thoughtful. I think it's really well done. I think it's a good idea to put this committee together and to include different stakeholders and especially community members. There have certainly been some concerns expressed in the community about, reducing the offerings for the high school. So I think it's really important that there are members of the community that are part of this decision and can help to disseminate the message once you have a message down the road on how this is progressing and the reasons for it. I think that's really important.
Put two questions into the chat. I know that if you're watching from home, you can't see that, but the two things that I'm hoping this committee will weigh in on tonight. One, is everybody comfortable if our team works with Tom to identify the structure of the ad hoc committee as in terms of how many people and what stakeholder groups, and then the mechanism to garner interest from people who would like to be on that committee or be part of that. The second piece is if folks are comfortable, if we focus our efforts for next year on 9th grade, or if people would like to see us also include 10th grade in that.
So I think he's looking to the EISA committee members, Tammy, Dawn, and Jamie, for an answer to these two.
Yeah.
Oh, Jamie, go ahead.
So I'm fine with the committee. I just want to make sure that this committee is being apprised of what that committee is how it's being constituted. Certainly would like to understand how it's being constituted. You don't want it. I think anyone's intending it. But as an example, you take things to the extreme. You don't want all teachers. You don't want all parents, right? You need a proper community. My preference, and I don't know what I'm about to some extent, so it's a preference from just listening for right now, would be 9 and 10, but I don't know the full ramifications of what that means as I say it. So I really acknowledge that too.
How I feel as well on both of those counts. Dawn?
Yeah, I was gonna say same. I'm absolutely, on board with putting together a team, and like Jamie said, it really needs to have, and I think you guys have done a pretty good job in the past, especially like Portrait of Graduate, things like that, really bringing in, all sorts of people from the community, which is great. So I have confidence that you guys will do that again. And then, I would like to start, I mean, realistically, I would also like to start looking at 9 and 10. But if you start looking into it and it really seems like it doesn't make sense, I think you just need to come back to us. So that's my feeling on it. If it really just is looking like it doesn't make sense, then just come back and say, hey, it really just, and then we can kind of talk from there. But I think I'd like to, also 9 and 10.
Well, I will tell you, if we were going to include 10, that rainbow chart that I showed you would be similar but different. So in the 10th grade model, we wouldn't be taking, the social studies would still be a credit. Wellness would not be a part of that. So the way that we would get the credit and a half for math and English is we would actually, for 1 year, suspend the student interest project period, which is part of our sophomore model right now. So that's a period where students explore something that they're passionate about. It's a great, unique program, but I think in the interest of thinking about what our long-term goals are, that's where it would make the most sense to take that time. So that 1 credit would get parsed out in those 2 half credits, and we would be able to schedule it in a similar way.
Dawn?
So I just wanted to add, because Brian's talking about the SIP, the Student Independent Project, and taking that out. And it can be great if a student uses it, you know, to really truly get into something that they're really passionate about. But it can also be taken to the teach myself how to play ukulele or guitar. So it really can go either direction in that class. So, you know, I don't have hard feelings about losing that class, because I know it's kind of hit or miss on whether it's a huge, I feel like, you know, really academically successful or not. So that's just my personal opinion on that one.
I was wondering if, well, I guess what I would say is, Dawn, I think that's the exact conversation that the committee has to have, is about, so we can do this for next year, but you just had a micro version of the whole bigger conversation. So the first question is, what do we value as a team and a community for our students' education as a high school student, which is partly Portrait of a Graduate, right? We've already kind of done some of that, but it's also how does that splay out into the timeliness or the, you know, I think that considering how our students are having difficulty in math and sometimes reading, we need to focus on that and figure out ways to support their interests. But I want to make sure, for the public's perspective, that no one on this call, no one on this committee, no one on this administration is of any belief that students don't need to have enrichment in high school. Students absolutely need to experience a wide range of activities during high school, and no one wants that to stop. We do want to figure out how to balance that with a solid core academic experience so that they're prepared for adult life. And we're going to do it. We're going to figure it out together as a community, and it's going to be excellent, and it's going to be fine. I just want everyone to hear that this is going to be tricky and it's going to be a little messy, but it's going to be okay, because we all recognize that in order to be a successful part of our society, you have to have a foundational knowledge of our society. You have to be able to read, you have to be able to write, and you have to have a fundamental understanding of science. We also recognize that people have to have an opportunity for exploration and engagement. And we are going to make sure that that's maintained in whatever program we choose. Amy, Dawn? Yeah.
Yeah, and just to reiterate, you know, when I'm saying I'm okay with seeing SIP go away, it's because I know that we also have another option for those students who have a serious passion for something else. Carrie Alley runs a great program that allows the students to really go in and focus on and create either an internship or create a class based on their interest. That is more, to me, more academically appropriate. I mean, I feel like they get more out of that class. So I would like to see more focus on those, you know, and maybe in place of the SIP where somebody's just doing something because they have to, instead of something because they're passionate about it.
All right. Well, I think I feel like I have clarity, and our next steps will be, so we will get together with Tom and make a recommendation for a committee structure and a process to solicit or identify people for that committee, and really, you see the charge of the committee, the task ahead. It's pretty monumental. They'll be getting to work in January, and meanwhile, we'll be updating our program of studies so that we're ready for January to start with next year's plan for 9 and 10.
Thanks, Brian, and thank you to Steve and Matt and Grace for all the work that you're doing on this. It's great work.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah, I'll dig into all those files and information you gave, Brian. I'll reach out. I just left you a note on that also.
Yeah, no, that's fine. Just send me an email. We can find it on Friday. I have a meeting first thing in the morning, but after that, it's pretty open. We'll find some time. Matt or Steve may even be free then too. Good.
Thank you. Thank the
Okay.
work.
Thank you, everyone. So appreciated all the work that everyone is doing. We're running a little long here. So unless anyone has any other comments or questions, I'm ready to adjourn so we can move on to our board meeting at 6 o'clock. Okay. All right. We are adjourned. Happy holidays, everybody.
Take care.